Hello and welcome to the Untitled Anarchist Seagull channel. I'm your host, an Untitled Anarchist Seagull called Elise. And everybody really seemed to enjoy the stream that I did last week where I was looking at this pro-Israel propaganda channel and their efforts to deal with the fact that nobody's buying what they're selling and finding every explanation for that other than that what they're selling sucks shit. So I was thinking we could look at a little bit more of that. I've got a number of options there. We've got why the woke are more outraged by pronouns than by Hamas. Or, apparently, their own very special take on the war on Christmas, which I'm actually quite. I've seen a little. I mean, I saw them trying this shit on the one that we were looking at last week, and I think I know where they're going with this. So, what else have we got? Well, there's still actually a fair bit of Israel needs to stop apologizing, because that's obviously the problem. And just to show they're on the wrong side of history, there's the legacy of Henry Kissinger, which I'm guessing is not meant going to be about what a horrible piece of shit he is. I think we're gonna go with why the woke are more outraged by pronouns than by Hamas. And this is another one. This is their The View clone, where we have a former Canadian ambassador to Israel who's picking up the settler colonial box set. She moved to Israel. She's a citizen there now. And then the fake ass deputy mayor of Jerusalem, who got completely monstered on LBC when she tried to lie and say there were no churches in Gaza and that there were no Christians in Gaza, and apparently was not prepared for the fucking presenter to be actually fairly well informed on these things. And she tried to explain that away on the episode that we watched last week. So, okay, here we go. Everything's on the table. That's the sort of thing you want to hear from Zionist propagandists when Israel's in the middle of a fucking genocide. Everything's on the table. That's just very reassuring.
Welcome to the...
Let me know, chat, if I need to make any adjustments to the audio as usual. Oh, no white turtleneck this time.
The 7th episode of The Quad from our studio in Jerusalem. Joining me this morning are co-hosts Emily Schrader, human rights activist and
yeah, human rights activist, my ass. Let's see, okay. I've never heard of her. But the fact that she's appearing on this show, that she's not just appearing on the show, she's one of the presenters, tells me that's bullshit. Schrader, what do we have here? Human rights activist. Founder of a political marketing consultancy firm. She's got a byline in the Jerusalem Post, one of the most right-wing newspapers available in English in Israel. Yeah, oh, she's got her very own fucking... Oh, I've already blocked her. Okay, that already tells me something. Yeah, I mean, let's see what we got. Where were you when Palestinians were persecuted by their own rulers? Oh, that's what she's doing. That's what she's doing. Well, I mean, so far I'm not really seeing a whole hell of a lot of human rights activism in her Twitter feed, chat. It's just mostly making excuses for Israel. Oh, and yeah, she's promoting all the Dastruma-esque propaganda about all the horrible things Palestinians are supposed to have done that for which no evidence has been produced. Hey, River Rune, how's the audio?
Journalist Ashira Solomon, political commentator and moderator.
Yes, she's a political moderator, whatever the fuck that is. I still don't know what that is.
And on the screen from beautiful London, in a taxi no less, Flor Hassan.
Oh, this is before she went and got humiliated on LBC when she told that blatant genocidal lie. This is she has not yet experienced. Oh yeah, I apparently blocked her a while back. I have no idea. I mean, I preemptively block a lot of racists, so I mean that's probably it.
No, she is on her way to stateside, right, Flor? And
Absolutely.
yeah, we can't stop her. I'm Vivian Berkovich.
Have you tried?
I'm the former Canadian ambassador to Israel, longtime lawyer. I'm now mainly a writer, journalist, and involved in some business. And of course, the Quad. And this is my...
Most importantly,
I've actually been kind of, waylaid since we...
They're using this Star Wars, is the fucking Star Wars font. Have they given any thought to who they represent in the Star Wars universe? Like, I mean, I just watched Andor a few weeks back. Friends of mine, comrades, have been like, you absolutely have to see this. And I was like, oh. I'd heard good things about it. I felt like, finally, okay, going to do it. And holy shit, if you haven't seen that, definitely watch it. It is so good, it amazes me it got made. But, yeah, I mean... like, why do they think it's a good idea to make people, when you have, like, this sort of distinctive font that is a very specific film allusion to a filmic universe, why would they think it was a good idea to have people thinking, hey, so who would they be representing in Star Wars?
We launched in October. I was in Canada because I had been there for the summer, and October 7th happened, and rather than returning to Israel right away, I stayed there because I was much more useful for a whole bunch of relief operations and efforts. Just returned the other night, little jet lagged. And
well, you can be fairly certain that the relief she's talking about is not relief for the Palestinians who are being starved to death in Gaza.
Thrilled to be here in person with my colleagues. It's wonderful. So thanks for being with us. And let's get right down.
I mean, I find it great that they're in person with no masks on because maybe they'll just get COVID and then...
The things. We decided this week that we would really get into the guts, explore...
I will say I like her glasses.
...the whole woke phenomenon, which...
Yeah,
part of that
I realized...
I suppose is going to be us trying to...
When I was rewatching my streams from last week in order to clip them together and make a video out of them, that I had been like clowning on them about the fact that there were 3 of them and they're called the Quad, and at the very beginning they actually did explain that Emily Schrader was doing some sort of propaganda trip to the US and that's why she was absent. So yeah, okay. That's the sort of thing, that's the sort of mistake you can recover from, just for certain fake mayors of Jerusalem who need to hear this. You can recover from that. That really is misspeaking, but on the other hand, when you say that people that or the country you represent is busy exterminating have already been exterminated when they haven't yet, that's not something you can recover from.
Explain what exactly it means and what it is. But there is this thing that's happening, and it's really become very pronounced since October 7th, which is this convergence of woke ideology, perceptions, ideas, and radical Islamist ideas, and this very peculiar coming together and convergence.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, this what gets me. They're acting like this is some novel idea they're discussing. I've heard versions of this bullshit going back years. Like PragerU has something on that tries to do this as well. The idea being that obviously, if you think that like Muslims should not be persecuted and should not be like murdered by Nazis and stuff, that means you totally are buying into radical Islamism. I mean, I think that's where she's going with this. But I mean, like PragerU did something ages ago. I think I actually looked at it on stream a long, long time ago. I mean, but they're acting like this is novel, which is a thing that like propagandists do a lot. Like, they trot out the new anti-Semitism literally every time Israel is in PR trouble. Even though at this point it's not the idea is not new, because the first time they did this was in like the 1970s, and it's just happened over and over again. They start like trotting this shit out. And for anyone who hasn't heard it, what the new anti-Semitism means is that, see, the anti-Semitism where it's about like racists wanting to hurt Jews, that is the old anti-Semitism. We don't need to bother with it. Apart from everything else, a lot of the people who are big on the old anti-Semitism are also big Zionists. Israel's not going to say anything bad about them. Sort of like Elon Musk and how the ADL's cool with him. Huge fucking anti-Semitic asshole, but he's pro-Israel, so that's all that actually matters. So that's what the new anti-Semitism is, when you think that Israel shouldn't. When you think that the things Israel does are kind of fucked up.
Versions of those two quite different ideologies, in my view.
That's the horseshoe theory,
Is it the horseshoe theory?
Yeah, and like what she just said, it's bullshit. I mean, that's a good example.
I mean, at the end of the day, they both hate Jews.
No, I mean, again, we're gonna hear this all. I mean, a drinking game that would actually probably require a liver transplant is every time they talk about Jews and don't acknowledge that a huge number of Jews are actually very much against what they're doing here, myself being one example of that. You drink, and then you need a fucking liver transplant after the stream.
That's like the gay pride parade. You see at the end of the gay pride parade, there's like the Islamists and all the extremists.
But what she means is queers for Palestine and Palestinian queers.
For whatever reason, gather together.
So, yeah, World War II analogy.
Yeah, for whatever reason. I wonder why that is. I wonder why it is that you would find, like, queer Arabs and queer Muslims at a pride parade. I mean, maybe it's because it's a pride parade, and of course they're going to be fucking all sorts of different queer people there.
It used to always be, at the extremes, fascists and communists, right? When you get really extreme in your ideology, you kind of end up meeting, right?
Yeah.
So, okay, horseshoe circle, you got to...
Oh, God. I mean, of course they're going to embrace horseshoe thought.
You got a favorite shape?
Sure. I like the square because we're the quad.
Okay.
Good answer.
Rectangle. Fleur.
Oh, God.
Come on, dazzle us.
Hi, guys.
Okay.
Oh, she's gonna dazzle us. This should be something. And of course, I mean, you've got reactionaries. One of them's got to be screaming in their car. I mean, we learned that already. We saw that guy, Askag, or whatever the hell his name is. Assjacks, or whatever. So, we've got that box ticked. We've got somebody who's going to be saying fucked up shit from their car.
Hey, no shapes from Fleur. So, I want to just... this is actually a really serious topic. Woke ideology is bait philosophy, whatever you want to call it. The way I see it, you guys are closer to it, probably just because of age, but the way I see it, it's...
Okay, we're gonna hear what woke ideology is.
It's like everything is assessed through the prism of identity, skin color, which is part of identity, and ethnicity, and then that kind of determines where you stand on the privilege scale, right?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, that what she's saying is fucking nonsense, but they find it serviceable.
Exactly woke.
And so Jews, somebody decided all Jews are white. They obviously haven't met you, Ashira.
Wait, is she? Her fucking Twitter bio says she's a Christian.
Didn't you know what? Yeah, somewhere deep down in there.
So
And actually, I mean, that's already nonsense. Yes, there are people who sort of deny the racialization of Jews and don't have any knowledge of that history. They think that the Nazis invented it and it was just 12 years out of, thousands of years of history. But the people who are saying that are pretty much always being very clear that they're not talking about all Jews, that they're not including Jews of color in that. Although, I mean, she calls herself a Christian on her Twitter bio, so what the fuck is this? Yeah, Ferengi Sandler.
no, that's me. And Jews are white, and therefore we are the most privileged of the privileged, which means we're the greatest oppressors and colonizers.
Yeah, no.
And we are right at the very peak.
No, that isn't what's going on. I mean, literally, you're representing a colonial regime here. You're going to at least acknowledge that there was colonization involved in that, right?
Peak of that oppression pyramid, right? Is that how you see it?
Yeah, I think that's pretty accurate description of what.
No, I mean it's just this. I mean, this is like PragerU degrade bullshit here already.
Of the whole woke mindset. I mean, it's about oppressed versus oppressor. It's simplifying things into binary choices, and unfortunately, that's not the reality of really any conflict, but especially this conflict. There's a lot of gray areas.
Yeah, let's hear about the gray areas. Let's hear about them.
There's a lot of complexity, and so to put people in either box is kind of determined.
Oh, there's complexity. We're gonna get to hear about some complexity. I can't wait to hear what complexity allows the U.S. and Israel to systematically, just openly announce they're going to starve 2 million people to death, and it's cool. It's cool because there's complexity, and she's a human rights activist. You see, so I mean, if a human rights activist is saying this, it's got to be okay.
And we see how much of an impact, a negative impact, that's had on even the Palestinian society. This whole concept of like perpetual victimhood.
She cares so much about Palestinian society.
UNRWA promotes a generation after generation of refugees. Gigi Hadid is a...
Yes, actually, generation. I wonder why it is that there are generation after generation of refugees. Could it possibly be that they're still not being allowed to return to the place that they were kicked out of? But, but she's a human rights activist, so, I mean, if she's saying this, obviously, it's cool to just sort of pretend that that's not a thing.
A refugee? Like this type of mentality, it's crippling.
Oh, wow, we get some ableism in there, too. That's neat. And it's really cute to hear her talk about that as a metaphor at a time when, I mean, this is a few weeks ago, apparently. When was this exactly? When did they upload this? 3 weeks ago. 3 weeks ago. Yeah. So, I wonder if we want to talk about crippling, we could talk about, all the fucking people who've had to be amputated without anesthesia because you're cutting off their medicine. That's kind of crippling, actually. In your fucking air-conditioned office. Well, heated at this point.
To, in some cases, specific minority groups. And in a way, it's been this self-defeating cycle for Palestinians. And then Palestinians who are brave
she's
enough
doing
to speak
culture
out
of
against
poverty. She's doing culture of poverty. This is, this is the stuff that, they sell in the U.S. They talk about, the self-defeating cycle of victimhood when they're trying to explain why it is that, black people are always on the shit end of the economy in the U.S.
Get slammed by other Palestinians. So it's not unique to them, but it's particularly problematic, I think, with the both Palestinian diaspora and the Palestinians in the West Bank and Gaza.
Yeah, I mean, it's so problematic. It's so problematic that they acknowledge that they were here first and that they don't like that you're on stolen land. That's so problematic. Yeah, no, well, of course nobody, I mean, that's the thing, River, you're giving this way more credit than it deserves already. They're just making this shit up. Yeah, I mean, I will be absolutely fucking gobsmacked if any of this mob bring up intersectionality, because they don't care. The woke, I mean, they're just taking this directly from like a white nationalist, because Zionism is kosher white nationalism. In fact, it's mostly not even kosher white nationalism, because most Zionists are not Jews.
Even get to the topic of Palestinians, I would like to back up to wokeness, because wokeness was rooted in America, became blacks and whites, and it came out that there's this white privilege. I'm really interested in how they were able to get mostly, I would say, a large part of the younger generation to become woke and to adopt these ideologies.
Well, maybe because people look at the society around them, and the society around them really sucks. Maybe people look at, you know, how racist the society is, and they say, well, maybe we shouldn't do that. Yeah, I wonder, are we going to get another one of these conspiracy theories that we get, like, on PragerU and stuff like that, trying to explain why it is that, you know, open racism is no longer in vogue?
And I think it really speaks to the moral decline in our society in the United States. I think since in the U.S. especially, they have replaced God with government, money, and materialism. But
what fucking decade did she come from that she thinks that there's a welfare state in the U.S.? Yeah, I mean, if there's one country where you just never see anything to do with God, it's the U.S. I mean, no religion anywhere. I mean, it's not like they put "In God We Trust" on the fucking money. It's not like kids are forced to say an oath of loyalty to the state every morning at school that specifically mentions God. Yeah, I mean, the U.S., I mean, totally godless country. No religion anywhere.
most of all themselves. So there's all of this self-righteousness. All of our messaging is about self.
Because like hasbaroids never get into self-righteousness. I mean, they're just such self-effacing people, your pro-Israel propagandists. I mean, like Eve Fartlow, she knows how to laugh at herself.
Love and focus on the self and the self and the self. The dangers of that is that human beings have a desire to connect with something outside of themselves, something higher. And so what we see is they're not connecting with God, so they need to connect with these trends and these movements. So then that's when we see BLM says, post the black square, and everyone posts the black square.
That's all that was. That's all BLM was. It was just some people randomly on Twitter said, post the black square, and everyone's like, hey, let's post the black square for no reason. No reason at all. Like, there was no, like, massive problem with racist state terror that this was a response to. I mean, I wonder, Ashira, could you enlighten us? Does BLM stand for something?
Because they feel connected. Or hashtag Free Palestine, and everyone's jumping on movements that they don't have any information about.
Yeah. I mean, this is hilarious because on the last one, what we saw, and the last one I should note was more recent. Like, the last one is actually later than the one we watched last week, is actually more recent than this one. But what the takeaway, when they had that retired colonel from military intelligence who they were all fangirling over because she did propaganda during the Second Intifada, and she said, the real problem is it used to be back during the Second Intifada, they'd have me on the news and they'd just say, Miri, what happened? And, she would be allowed to frame it. But now, everybody's got smartphones, and so everybody's seen what happened, and her job is she's being asked to explain why this is supposedly okay. And she said that was a microaggression. So, like, the literal problem, and they were all nodding along. Well, Emily Schrader wasn't. She was off doing something racist in the U.S. at the time. They were all nodding along to this. That the real problem was that these days people have too much information. And now she's sitting here, I mean, she's saying, oh, no, people are just so uninformed. Hey, Phoenix.
And they don't necessarily want to be informed about it. It's not connected to their personal values. And there's dangers in that.
So, wow. So she thinks the reason that people risk their careers, risk all sorts of shit, because, I mean, it is easier, it is safer to be pro-Palestinian rights in the U.S. than it was 20 years ago. That, I think, is definitely the case. But it is still not a risk-free proposition. So she's saying that people are, like, taking upon it themselves to potentially become ostracized in their communities if it's a reactionary community, which there are a fair number of them, to support Palestinian rights despite not having any connection to their values. And it's like, no. That's not how that works.
The danger in wanting to either be a noble victim, either you are from this marginalized group and you find nobility in your victimhood.
But scare quotes around marginalized, because there's no marginalization, there's no oppression, or a marginalization going on.
Or you're a person that's white and you have white guilt and now you want to be a...
This is just PragerU! This is just the same sort of white supremacist talking points you get at PragerU.
Say, look, I stand with noble victims, so I have nobility. Click and follow and like what I'm doing. So every time Palestine comes up in the news twice a year, everyone posts the hashtag. The problem is there's dangers in blindly supporting movements that you don't know about. There are...
You think the people who are posting the Free Palestine hashtag are not, like, reading about Palestine? Not, at the very least, clicking on that hashtag to see what else there is? I mean, what she's saying here about the danger of supporting movements that you don't know about, I mean, that is actually... The thing is, I mean, there is some truth to that. And that is actually why you see a lot of a lot of Jewish people get disgusted with Zionism, because they were sort of raised to support it and just told them very little about what it actually stood for, about the actual facts about what was going on in Palestine. They just, it was just sort of a reflexive thing. We're cool people, and it's, it's an ideology for, in support of a country ruled by cool people, so obviously it's cool, right? And, and actually finding out about Israel turns out to be the antidote for Zionism for a lot of Jews. Like, a fair number of people come back from fucking birthright trips utterly disgusted with what they saw and, like, really ready to start rejecting Zionism as a result.
Consequences, and consequences matter. And over here where we live, life and death is really at our door more than in the U.S., I would say. I mean, we just seen 3 people killed last week in Jerusalem, shot.
Wow, I wonder if there's someplace, maybe a couple of hours south of you, where where there's a lot more of that life and death stuff going on right now, because this is 3 weeks ago. At this point, it would have been like close to 20,000 people already having been murdered. And she's going to talk about like 3 people in Jerusalem.
At a bus stop, a 16-year-old girl, a 24-year-old woman who was just married this February and who was pregnant. These hashtags and these and you supporting certain movements that you don't have any knowledge about, it has consequences, and the consequences are dangerous. So I would say that looking at this woke ideology, especially in the Jewish community, I seen someone post saying, if you are a Jewish parent and your child is now a progressive, say, a Nazi sympathizer or hashtagging Free Palestine, you did something wrong.
Wait, a Nazi sympathizer or hashtag free? Those are what? Because is she saying that saying that this person was equating being a Nazi sympathizer to supporting Free Palestine? Because then that's just straight up Holocaust denial. Let's be honest. But
and so I really think that we can determine the health of a nation by the health of the families, because families make up a nation, and we really see that the families are not teaching the children, and the children are out here seeking trends and movements to be a part of.
I sort of like some people latch on to Zionism, you mean?
A lot of interesting commentary packed in there. I'm going to have to jump on the very end as a parent and say that we parents can really neither take credit for when our kids do stuff in a way with which we agree, nor can we sort of blame ourselves when they kind of go on the skids, because they all do it.
Wait, okay, first of all, they all do it. It sounds like maybe some issues with her kids, but never mind. But I mean, it seems to me the parents probably do have some role in the whole thing, though. I mean, I don't think you can say the parents had nothing to do with it. I mean, obviously they're not the only factor in the whole thing. But I think they're kind of in there, for better or for worse.
Until that.
I'm not a parent, but I actually do agree. I can't blame the parents.
Claire's a parent of 4.
Yeah, I want to pick up on what both Emily and Ashir are saying, because I really agree with Emily that it's become very binary, the oppressed and the oppressed. But
I wonder why somebody would look at a racist regime that colonized people and kicked out 750,000 and is stealing their land and murdering them in large numbers and deliberately starving them to death, and then posting TikToks where it's where they're laughing and having a good time ruining the homes of people they murdered. And people are saying, wow, I mean, that looks kind of fucking binary to me, actually.
the irony is that we're supposed to be living in this crazy non-binary world.
That's not what non-binary means!
Right.
25 different genders, and that's the non-binary, and the
Yeah, okay, I mean, you may have already gotten the idea from the title of this thing, but CW here, there's gonna be some transphobia, because this is why the woke are more outraged by pronouns than by
rainbow flag keeps getting bigger and wider, and they're inventing colors, and yet for this, it's black or white.
So what you're saying is okay, so the contradiction here is, on the one hand, I mean, these people are really unreasonable. That's what you just have to agree with. You have to agree, because they're saying that, sexuality and gender are very complex things, and that people have all sorts of different things, but also that racism is bad. And don't they understand that if you have all sorts of genders, that means you gotta take a nuanced approach and say that maybe racism is kind of good sometimes? I knew this was going to be wild.
This or that. And that is a really interesting and very sad and depressing phenomenon. To go back to Ashira, and we'll be talking in a little bit with parental coach Avital Schreiber, there is a lot at fault with the American parents. Because the
the American parents are clearly the problem. I mean, your fucking kids are doing TikToks where you put on brown face and laugh at people who are being genocided. Or go over and just wreck people's houses and then like film themselves knocking on the door of the house where they killed everybody and saying, "Oh wow, nobody's home," and they think that's funny. Yeah, I mean, but it's clearly it's American parents who are the problem. I mean, nothing fucked up going on at all with the younger generation in fucking Israel.
American parents think that parenting means protecting your child from anything uncomfortable, anything that they bother them or will not agree with.
It is amazing. I mean, this is just such bog standard right-wing talking points. It is just straight up nothing but pure PragerU right here. I mean, I'm surprised they don't have Steven Crowder on here.
Resilience as an adult is being able to talk to people you don't agree with.
Yeah, like, which is why, of course, you're gonna have some Palestinians on here to talk, say things that you don't agree with about what you're doing to them, for example.
Has been able to face situations that are a little bit difficult.
I mean, you're literally living in a country where there's what's called the Reception Committees Act. And the Reception Committees Act, what that is it is the Zionist version of South Africa's Group Areas Act. Except that they try to be a little bit slick about it. So instead of just outright saying, this is an area where black people are allowed to live, this is an area where only white people are allowed to live, whatever. What they do is they have reception committees. These committees get to decide, based on whatever factor that they see fit, whether a new family, a new person's allowed to move into the neighborhood. And the idea is to make sure that Palestinian citizens of Israel are kept out of Jewish-only neighborhoods. But yeah, I mean, tell us more about how the problem is, the reason people are getting into the woke is that they don't want to talk to different people. Explain how this is about fear of diversity in your fucking segregated country where, like, I mean, she said they're in Jerusalem where people are being ethnically cleansed right now.
You know, I say this to my kids all the time, and I'm by no means a model, mommy me, but
that's for sure.
When my children come to me and they say they're upset about something, and they tell me this is affecting my mental health, and I say to them, this is life. This is not mental health.
Yeah, what does mental health have to do with life? Living people don't have minds. Jesus Christ.
Health is being able to deal with difficult situations.
Yeah, and they're coming to you for help dealing with difficult situations. They're literally doing the thing that they're supposed to be able to do. And you're saying, and you're giving them nothing, apparently. And you're bragging about this, which does not speak highly of you. But it's actually not as bad as the time that she tried to get out of talking about Israel's systematic attacks on the Christian community of Gaza by pretending there wasn't one, and then she got called out for it because the presenter knew perfectly well that there was one. But that hadn't happened yet. This is in the happy days before she'd been totally monstered on LBC radio.
We're not at the point of a depression, thank God. But
yeah, but you can be. That's the thing.
I'm saying is that feeling uncomfortable about something, being in a difficult situation, does not mean you're going through a mental health crisis. It's just...
They didn't say that it was a mental health crisis. In your fucking example, it was like it was hurting their mental health. That doesn't mean it's a mental health crisis.
It means you're coping with life. And I think that American parents have helicoptered and shielded and turned their kids into snowflakes to the point that they cannot hear a dissenting opinion.
See, what I would love to know is what happens if one of her kids brings home a Palestinian boyfriend or girlfriend, to see how she copes with things she's not comfortable with.
And on that, I agree with Ashira.
I'm not actually sure that that's coming from, I mean, of course, in some cases it is, and I'm not a parent, so I don't have a whole lot of credibility on this, but
fucking children of the corn here.
But I like most of this sort of...
Oh, and here we go with that map. Notice interesting thing about that map. There is no acknowledgement of the Gaza Strip or the West Bank. It is just Israel with absolutely no land for Palestinians. That's the map she's got behind her.
Of mentality and indoctrination that I learned. I was never part of these movements, but most of what I heard about it was university. It was coming from, in some cases, like high school, but at the time I was in high school a little bit less, I think, than now. But the universities is...
Wow, I mean, there's all sorts of, like, fucking, ideas and stuff at universities. It's so weird. Why can't universities in the U.S. be more like universities in Israel where there's strict censorship?
Even now versus when I was there.
And you can actually lock somebody up and take away all their shit for publishing anything that that harms the national morale. Or at least that was a proposal that the cabinet was considering a few weeks ago. I know that they've got a law right now. I mean, speaking of how, you know, the woke are always into the censorship, because I'm sure we're going to hear about that. Passive social media consumption can get you locked up in Israel at this point if you are looking at social media that is not approved by the government. That is, I mean, Palestinians are already just locked up for looking at Facebook groups, looking at posts that that the government doesn't want them to see. This is Palestinian citizens of Israel I'm talking about. You know, so obviously Israel is doing a great job of preparing people to deal with, like, information they're uncomfortable with by just censoring it and sending people to prison for looking at it.
You know, 10 or so years ago, it's way worse. And it started when I was there. I remember my first semester, I was like, everything was like social justice everywhere. Nobody knew what that meant.
Really? Maybe, I'm thinking maybe not knowing what that meant is more of a you problem, Emily. I think the people saying that, they probably had a pretty clear idea what that meant. May not agree with it, they're probably libs. But I have a feeling that they probably had an idea, a fairly tolerable understanding of their meaning of it.
Nobody knew what they wanted, but that was like the theme of the whole university, social justice.
You know,
yeah, literally nobody had any demands.
It's mutated a lot. What that means. I want to just respond to...
This is just PragerU!
The sort of the binary, the uncomfortable binary nature of this whole woke thing, because what I'm sort of totally fixated on are two things. One is the speed with which it's spread since October 7th. I mean, it was all...
I wonder if that's something to do with the fact that the government that you're doing propaganda for immediately announced they wanted to kill 2 million people. I wonder if maybe there's something that people just didn't like that.
All the elements were there, but there was this like perfect storm, right? Where you had the wokesters, if I can reduce them to that.
The wokesters. Oh, wonderful.
And the sort of pro-Hamas / Islamists, if I can reduce them to that.
Well, why not? I mean, what's a little bit more reductionism between racists?
And they're having a lovin' on the streets of Europe and North America. And that's just crazy because, you know, you got like Queers for Palestine and every other, you know, just I pick on them because it's such an obvious problem. Paradox.
Yeah, because Israel is so great. Like, I mean, if you're gay or lesbian, you can go to Israel and you cannot get same-sex married, and you can go to Pride. And if you're lucky, you will avoid getting hit on the head by the rocks that fascists throw at you, while the cops sort of sit around playing with their pricks. Yeah, I mean, Israel is so great for queer people, especially queer Palestinians. Like, I mean, queer Palestinians are having a wonderful time right now because they get the get out of apartheid free card. And what that is if they're closeted, the Israeli secret police will approach them and say, yeah, you're going to become a fucking tout for us, or we're gonna tell the people who would hurt you for it that that you're gay, because Israel's just so wonderful on the whole LGBT rights thing. I mean, and I would be absolutely shocked if there's anybody on this panel who is even the slightest bit queer.
And they're like, linking arms with, the pro-Hamas people. And do you understand what Hamas does to people like you?
First of all, show us some pro-Hamas people. And notice she also mispronounces the name. I mean, she's a native English speaker. Everybody on this thing is not from... I mean, let's see. Fake mayor of Jerusalem is from Gibraltar. Ashira's from the States. Berkovich is from Canada, as she's picking the Settler Colonial box set, and I think Emily Schrader might also be from Canada, because she said at university. No, I'm not sure. I didn't notice, and I don't feel like going back and checking. And none of these people seem to have the slightest idea. If they're linking arms with the pro-Hamas people, doesn't that suggest that, I mean, yeah, we're at a protest. The reason she doesn't know these people, the reason she knows that this is supposedly happening is because there are placards. And so the supposed pro-Hamas people apparently are also quite happy with the Queers for Palestine. So maybe the problem that you're seeing here is a you problem again.
And there's so much, apropos your comment, Shira, nobody really knows what they're talking about. They're not just slowing down to actually think it through. And I think that's a huge issue, huge. But in universities, when I was in university, we were still dealing with Vietnam. That was the thing, and the Cold War.
Which is cute. I mean, maybe she went to university in the States, but, Canada's role in Vietnam was, of course, to posture, moralizingly and quietly make money off of the war.
And, because, I'm old, but, we're really kind of immersed in the Cold War in Vietnam and the legacy of Vietnam. I wasn't in university, nor there was Fleur for the woke thing.
Well, you're better for it.
I totally agree. Did you have that experience?
My experience when I went to university was the first time I had someone tell me that I would have a hard time succeeding because I was Black. I never grew up with these ideas. My parents never taught me that something's going to be harder for you because you're Black. You're going to...
Okay. And maybe that's true, but racism kind of exists. I feel like this would not be the first time that somebody would become aware, hear that racism exists.
Have a harder time in college because you're Black. And so they had made all these special courses and classes and accelerated classes for people of color. And I remember having these messages thrown down my throat that you cannot succeed at this, you cannot compete based on merit. Again,
first of all, why should you have to compete?
To your peers because you are Black. And I believe it gives...
who was saying that, though?
Black people also.
Because this sounds, very much like the PragerU version of this stuff. This does not sound like what anyone actually says.
Esteem. Because we come in and when we get positions, even DEI, we get positions and we don't know if we got it because we're Black. We don't know if we're just at the table because we're Black. We don't know, did you pick me because I'm smart and I'm educated and I'm qualified, or do you just pick me because you need to fulfill this Black role?
No.
So why do you think that that this bunch of racists decided to have you on? Just out of curiosity. I mean, do you really think that they did not take that into account, that they were actually, let me just say, a crackerjack team?
Oh, we picked you because you're smart.
Well, not here. No, but I remember in university, and I remember specifically I had applied for this huge fellowship from the State Department, and I had...
Okay, so she's from the States also. Yeah, and the State Department... Oh, I'm not surprised to see that, The State Department's in the mix.
had an advisor say, "Can we just write in it that you're African American?" And I said, "No."
Yeah, this whole,
I said, I want to be chosen because I can compete.
It's really interesting you say that, because when I was my first semester of university, and perhaps this was really naive of me, but I also thought the same thing. I went in and suddenly everyone everywhere at every level, from administration to the other students, are talking about like race issues and who has what
Wow, it's almost like racism is a thing that exists.
privilege and what level of privilege. And I literally never thought about it before.
Wow, I'm shocked. I'm really shocked to hear that she never had to give that any thought.
Like, and on the one hand, that is naive, because there is a historic persecution and there are some inequalities, even in terms of opportunity, and
That's very big of you to admit that.
should be dealt with and remedied. But like, the scale is so out of proportion with what the situation is on the ground that I felt like they wanted us
Yeah, it doesn't affect her. So why should we be talking about it?
to fight.
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, she's never had to deal with, I mean, how obviously there's no problem with racism in society because nobody's doing a racism to her.
they wanted to divide us even more. And I never encountered
You're
that before.
literally in a country where there is a race entry on your ID. Your civil and what rights you have as a citizen are determined by what it says.
I never heard that mentality. I never grew up with that mentality.
Then how are you? It must have been really hard for you to adjust to that mentality in Israel. Then, if you had no idea, if you were, I mean, I'm sure she's about to say something about being colorblind.
Literally never. If I saw someone sitting across from me who was different than me, I wasn't like, oh, well, they're at a disadvantage. I need to help them. And they wanted me.
Oh, Jesus Christ. Like, can we just say thank fuck? She never said, oh, they're at a disadvantage and I need to help them. Because, I mean, that would be some cringe shit. Like, I mean, Ashira's here just imagining how fucking cringe that would be. Look at that. Look at her facial
Fleur,
expression.
I think that this is where we say, like our kids, that is just life. Deal with it, right?
But I actually think that that is racism.
It is.
Yeah, racism of low expectations.
The racism of low expectations. That's George W. Bush, if I remember correctly. Hey, I mean, God, they are ticking the PragerU boxes here.
Absolutely.
I want to bridge that to the Palestinians, because in the same way, the Palestinians are treated by the entire world like they have no agency, like they have no responsibility, like they have to be the poor, oppressed, zero accountability.
Well, I mean, they showed some agency on October 7th, and you decided to genocide them as a result of that. Like, literally, if you think that they shouldn't have to be poor and oppressed, maybe stop taking their shit and oppressing them. Like, I mean, it is just so wild to see her saying this kind of bullshit. Yeah, like, when a short walk away, there are pogroms going on and Palestinians are being kicked out of their homes. I mean, like, the ethnic cleansing is happening a fucking short, you wouldn't even need a taxi to get there. And she's talking about this the Palestinian, why do they have to always be poor? And, it's like, because you keep stealing their shit.
For their genocidal education.
Yeah, I mean, they're the ones with the genocidal education, not the people whose cabinet just openly said, yeah, we're going to starve and we're gonna see whether starvation or dehydration kills them first. So we're gonna cut off all the food, medicine, water, and fuel, and just kind of see how quickly they all die. I mean, they're the ones with the genocidal education.
for their corruption, for the fact they...
Their corruption, like fucking, at the moment, Netanyahu, a big part of the reason that he cannot, I mean, apart from just being a genocidal fuck, which he is, a big part of the reason why he will not consider ending this is that he knows he is finished the minute this thing is over. The minute this thing ends, he is finished. He will probably be going to jail because he's got a bunch of corruption cases against him. He actually, I mean, at the very least, his political career is over because October 7th happened on his fucking watch.
They haven't been able to govern themselves. We left 2005 the Belgians.
They haven't been able to govern. You're the ones preventing them from governing themselves.
Nobody's saying, wow, look what they did with it. No.
Actually, I mean, I haven't been there, but having seen what they did under the circumstances, yeah, I have to say I have said, wow. I mean, like Gaza, before these motherfuckers got done with it, actually, I mean, for all the shit that they were dealing with, you could tell that is that is a place that is loved by the people who live there because, with what they've got, they were taking really good care of it, and it looked really nice. One of the things that I absolutely lost my shit over is looking for some, comprehensible input to work on my Palestinian Arabic, because my Arabic isn't great, and I'd like to be able to understand a lot of things without having to rely on translations that sometimes are not always that reliable. And one of the things that came up was Bisan, one of her videos from a couple years ago, and it's just called Welcome to Gaza. And it's just her taking, doing a vlog, taking a tour around the city and showing the bits that her favorite bits and stuff. And it's like, I couldn't finish it. But yeah, actually, knowing what they're having to deal with, it is actually kind of impressive what they've managed to do under the circumstances. With you motherfuckers stealing their water, bulldozing their, centuries-old olive groves.
We've taken all agency, we've made them into people who cannot cope, and to me,
it's interesting that she's saying we there.
To this wokeism, and that is the real racism. When you expect...
we're ticking some boxes here. Wokeism is the real racism.
That's from people from different ethnic minorities. That is the real racism.
I think I want to also, it's such an important point. The discrimination of low expectations.
Well, let's talk about the discrimination of the race laws in the country you're in right now. You want to talk about that a little bit? We can talk about the fact that if an Israeli citizen marries somebody, if a Jewish Israeli citizen marries somebody who is not a citizen, they can bring that citizen into the country. But if a non-Jewish Israeli citizen, a Palestinian citizen of Israel, for example, marries a non-citizen, they cannot. It is so fucking on the nose. This isn't, because the thing is, in a lot of ways, in a lot of ways, you end up with very much the same thing, whether you have a regime like the US that claims to believe in equality and stuff like that, but is actually fairly hypocritical and full of shit about that, versus a regime like Israel, which openly and from its foundation rejects the idea of equality, rejects the idea of being the state of its citizens, and is very explicitly only the state of one ethnic group that just so happens to be mostly not from there. But it also, it's just wild hearing these people be like, oh, well, low expectations. Acknowledging that there is racism is the real discrimination in a country that does not even pretend not to discriminate, because Israel does not even pretend.
And, we don't want to go back into history to get too granular about this, but
that vlog, give me a second. I will see if I can find it. This is like a few weeks ago. Hmm. Let me see. It'll be in history, I suppose. Okay, hang on a second. Okay, the title would be in Arabic. See if I can find this for you. Motini. Palestine Biladi. Here we go, I found it. It wasn't a channel I'd ever followed. But here we go, I found it. I just had to look up Gaza in Arabic. With my limited Arabic typing skills. There we are. That's from a couple of years ago. That's her talking, that's just a video of her talking about, as far as I could follow it, the things she likes about her town.
750, 800,000 Jewish people forcibly expelled from Arab and Middle Eastern countries.
Which Israel actually played a huge role in. Like, if you look up the Lavon affair, that was the one they got caught for. They got caught, Mossad agents got caught trying to bomb the Alexandria synagogue in Egypt. They did not get caught in other places. Like Avi Shleim, who's an Iraqi-Israeli historian, from a prominent Iraqi Jewish family, he published his memoirs recently. And one of the things he talks about is all the evidence that exists for Israel's role in the attacks on the Jewish community in Iraq. It all happened very conveniently, and Israel was massively involved in doing it. But it's interesting that they use the word, come up with 750,000 when that's the exact number of Palestinians who were kicked out during the Nakba.
And at the time, there were 500,000 Palestinians that were either expelled or chose to leave, depending on which narrative you choose to ascribe to.
Well, yeah, because you can choose the narrative that is the facts, which was 750,000. She's like taking 250,000 off. What's 250,000 expelled Palestinians between friends? But you could choose. That's the great thing. You can choose which narrative, and you can choose the version that is a lie, but makes you feel better. That where they chose to leave. Now, except the trouble with that narrative, it breaks down a little bit when you consider that they chose to leave because they were getting shot at, and they thought that they would actually be able to return home when it was safe.
But the numbers speak for themselves. And those 500,000 today constitute millions, right?
Yeah.
Because grandfathered. Okay. 5 million. And Jewish, we have a big whopping 0, right? And they're...
A big whopping 0 what?
It's just so graphic and dramatic. The Palestinians are the only people that have been grandfathered, that have had their...
That's actually a lie. You hear this a lot. But see, the reality is this. The way asylum law works, the way international and national asylum law works, is that your status as a refugee continues as long as the cause for your flight continues. So, if you were forced to leave your country because of some regime that wants to kill you ruling it, and 2 generations later that regime is still in power, then yeah, you are still, that refugee status is going to continue. That is not anything unusual. And in fact, if you look at, say, German law, for example, interestingly, Article 116 of Section 2 of the German Constitution, which has no limit on how many generations removed you have to be from Nazi persecution to reclaim your German citizenship.
Status grandfathered, so it passes down from generation to generation.
Yeah, because the thing is, they're still not allowed to come back home.
And creates this culture, this mentality of victimhood.
Oh, I see we've got a spammer. Yeah. Okay, gotta block somebody. If I can find the fucking window. There we go. Goodbye, dirty thirsts. Fuck off.
And, I mean...
Yeah.
And the thing is, this is
lucrative. It's lucrative.
It's lucrative, and it's also...
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing more lucrative than having everything that your family ever owned stolen by Israel. I mean, that's lucrative. You get that wonderful Palestinian refugee money. Fuck it.
I mean, because it is promoted by the UN, but that's maybe another show. But
oh yeah, I mean, everybody. I mean, we all are just live in envy of the refugee services provided by the UN. I mean, if anybody's got it just too good, it's fucking refugees, right? I mean, you get UNRWA, and I mean, maybe some really shitty accommodations, and you get to, like, stare at a bunch of racists from another country showing up and stealing your shit, and then acting resentful about and then they form a YouTube channel to act resentful about the fact that you're not happy with that situation.
I mean, I think what we want to do is kind of try to, let's tie that, because we're talking about woke, we're talking about the victimhood thing and the narrative, and what we haven't spoken about.
I wonder, if anyone else has a history, say a political movement has a history of manipulating historical victimhood in order to in order to play on the sympathies of people who might otherwise not be particularly sympathetic to what that movement is doing. I wonder if there's, I mean, the name starts with a Z. I wonder.
Yeah. And I'd like to hear from you on this, floor, is the curriculum in the West Bank and Gaza schools and the UNRWA involvement in overseeing that curriculum and promoting it. It's supposed to be, about reading, writing, arithmetic. And as we know, a lot of their arithmetic problems are like, how many Jews did you shoot today and how many are left?
Yeah, show us some proof of that. I think a citation might be needed here.
Yeah. So can you talk a bit about that?
I mean, after all, as the Claudine Gay case showed us, Zionists care about citations.
Okay, so I've been doing a deep dive for a number of years now on the Palestinian Authority curriculum because...
let's remember, the Palestinian Authority is a subordinate government agency of Israel. The Palestinian Authority can't do shit without Israel's approval because Israel controls the purse strings. Israel is the only reason that Abbas, fucking Abu Talezi, still gets to play at being president. His term of office ended in 2009. They have not been allowed to have an election because the last time they were allowed to have an election, it came out a way that the U.S. and Israel didn't like. So he gets to play at being president of this fucking Judenrat. So, I mean, talking about the Israel's Palestinian Authority school curriculum, I mean, it's like, it's your fucking government that's doing this. They're, like, literally they can't get funding for anything if they don't. But I'm guessing if you actually look at these textbooks, what they're actually complaining about is that they teach history.
Actually, I realized that in Jerusalem, we have the same educational curriculum that you have in Gaza. And now this curriculum is not just full of lies, hatred, Israel doesn't exist, shouldn't exist.
Well, I mean, it does exist, but I mean, yeah, I mean, it shouldn't. It's a shitty regime.
Completely
But
obsessed
that's not a lie. That's just an opinion.
with the rights of return, which of course means river to the sea, the destruction of Israel.
It's interesting. I mean, that they think that that's actually a good argument to use. Because the thing is, if like elementary justice is what it takes to destroy your regime, then maybe your regime ought to be destroyed. Like, I mean, if like I mean, I remember Norman Finkelstein when he began his cringe arc, like trying to act like this was some sort of a dunk on BDS, that, you know, if you sum up the BDS demands, like equal rights, an end to the race laws, an end to the occupation, and right of return, all of which are required by, I mean, like, that is totally, it's worth noting, within the just parameters of international law. They're not asking, these are not radical demands in that sense. They are, like, literally just baseline bourgeois legality being implemented. And he's like, yeah, but how is that not the destruction of Israel? And it's like, I mean, if you're saying that just, you know, not having state-sponsored racism is the destruction of the regime, then the regime really really just sucks, actually. Like, I mean, they think that this is such a good talking point. But if basic justice is enough to destroy your regime, then maybe your regime needs to go.
Every single aspect of this curriculum, down to the math, like, you know, you killed 5 Jews in the first Intifada and 7 Jews in the second Intifada. How many Jews? The indoctrination.
Yeah, let's see an actual example of that. Let's see some fucking evidence.
And the incitement and the glorification of martyrdom is unparalleled.
Well, yeah, I mean, Zionists would never glorify martyrdom.
And who's paying for this? UNRWA. It's going against their own stated values. They're paying for it, and it's...
Yeah, I mean, their stated value is that there should be neutrality in the education, which is kind of ridiculous when, I mean, these facts aren't neutral. If you just sort of tell the facts as they are, they're not neutral. It does not look good for Israel, which is why the Israeli propagandists love to avoid talking about the facts.
So good for Hamas that they didn't make their own curriculum. They're using the Palestinian Authority curriculum taught in UNRWA schools all around Judea and Samaria, West Bank, Gaza, and East Jerusalem. So I've been fighting to try and get rid of it in East Jerusalem. And when we talk about...
which is also occupied territory, but they've just sort of openly annexed it.
How do we create a terrorist? Well,
maybe how you create a terrorist is that you steal all their shit, you terrorize their community, every once in a while you massacre a few thousand of their neighbors, and then you TikTok about it, and yeah, your fucking goon-ass soldiers go and, like, do TikToks where they're, like, doing a fucked up impression of the Rick James Fuck Yo Couch sketch from David Chappelle's show back 20 years ago. Except that the difference is that sketch was about how actually what Rick James was doing was kind of fucked up, and then he says cocaine is a hell of a drug, and we're laughing at him, actually. Except that in this, they think that the people we're supposed to be laughing at are the people they murdered and whose houses they're now vandalizing. I think that might have something to do with why somebody might want to take up arms against your shitty-ass regime.
The UN is not only not taking us closer to peace, it's taking us further away from peace by funding a curriculum of hatred. And from going to how to create a terrorist, I had the privilege of talking to parental coach and expert Avital Schreiber of how...
Parental coach and expert. Okay, who the hell is Avital Schreiber? The parenting junkie. Yeah. Let's see. A mindful parenting coach. Okay, great. Yeah, fuck off. And apparently, okay. And surprisingly enough, given that this is Israel, she's probably really fucking racist.
You create a terrorist sympathizer. I'm very proud that my co-host, Ashira Solomon, and I are interviewing an expert. Avital Schreiber-Levy is a family coach and published author dedicated...
Yeah, I mean, totally an expert on the situation Palestinians are living in.
...to helping parents make resilient children, and is the founder of HiFam, has many, many people subscribing to her channel for parental advice. And also,
who cares?
Avital has done a deep dive on toxic woke culture. And
ooh, she's done a deep dive on toxic woke culture. Oh, this is great. We're gonna get another deep dive on. I wonder if she's gonna manage to actually like get a tolerably accurate description of what that even fucking means.
How this is what parents are ingraining, and of course, our wonderful Ashira is very much into the subject also of toxic woke culture and how it's ruining society in America.
Yes.
So, Avital, the question is, how do you raise a terrorist sympathizer? How do parents raise a child? Supposedly you give them everything. I'm a mother too. You give them everything.
Ooh, she's a mother too.
And these are the people shouting death to Jews when
wait a second. Like, people... Okay, she's the fake mayor of Jerusalem, a place where there are regularly state-sponsored mobs chanting Mavet la'Aravim, death to Arabs. Yeah? And, like, literally, this is a thing that is going on all the time. The cops don't do anything about it. The cops are participating in it a lot of the time. The government praises it. The government will often send people to speak to these fucking pogroms. So maybe if you want to talk parenting, maybe you should start with your own fucking kids.
At the same time, they're super sensitive about using the wrong pronoun.
Wow, so they're against racism and they're also against transphobia.
Yeah. So first of all, Fleur, Sarah, thank you so much for having me. It's such an honor to be here with you both. This is, the question.
Okay, she's fucking English. Okay.
That I've been trying to decode for the last, decade or so, and certainly the last couple of years, I've really done a deep dive into it.
Actually, that's sounding kind of South African, actually. Let me see. Where is she actually from originally? The like source Afrikaans accent or Rooinek accent? Ja, ik ga zoeken. Here we go. Well, I mean, it's definitely not a Hebrew accent. We can say that. It is either, it's like English or South African.
And to start a little bit further back, a couple of decades back, really, or even in the 90s, what we started to see was a certain squirmishness around parenting for morality at all, right?
Parenting for morality.
With the rise of secularism, with the decrease in religious households, there was suddenly no moral framework that...
Yeah, because, like, literally, there's no other moral framework other than, like, religion.
Basically led our households to teach children simple right from wrong. And what actually came into fashion instead was a judgment-free, guilt-free, shame-free type of culture.
You mean guilt-free and shame-free? Sort of like the people who will commit war crimes and TikTok themselves doing it while all the while cackling all along the way like fucking comic book villains, except that you wouldn't write it in a comic book because it would be way too fucking on the nose. Like, I mean, because that seems like some very guilt-free, shame-free sort of thing in a context where they should actually feel very guilty and ashamed.
And when you get completely rid of guilt and shame and judgment, you aren't left with just a, kumbaya culture, as you might hope. But what comes to rush in and fill that God-shaped hole is a different type of religion. And wokeness is absolutely and can be and should be classified as a non-theistic religion, right? It has.
Okay, let's hear. Here we go. We're gonna get somebody defining wokeness. This is always fun.
All of the markings of a religion. It has the blasphemy. It has the original sin. It has heretics. It has clergy.
No, it doesn't. Like, I mean, it's so neat how, like, you can totally fit something into any category you want as long as you just sort of make shit up.
It has incantations. It has holy rituals and rites. It has chosen.
Will you show me? Give me an example. What's a fucking holy ritual and rite of wokeness? Come on. Yeah, don't be shy, Avital. Show us a holy ritual of wokeness. I mean, is that like, is a holy ritual of wokeness when, you manage to get the Ark of the Covenant to do the thing where Nazis' faces melt off when they try to open it? Is that a holy ritual of wokeness?
People, and it has really got all of the makings of a religion.
Especially if you just make shit up.
It's based on a few really key tenets, right? These are kind of the 10 commandments of wokeness, right? And the first is this identity politics idea where we have to divide everyone.
That's like literally not a commandment, though.
Into classes. So we used to think it was.
You're fucking doing propaganda for a country where people have gone to court. Like, Israeli Jews have gone to court to get the race marker taken off of their IDs and just be listed as Israeli, as nationality Israeli. And the Supreme Court has knocked them back repeatedly because actually, you know, and your entire legal status in the country depends on whether what your race marker on your ID is. So, like, and you're gonna be talking about, identity politics, that's so weird, you know, how could anyone do this? By the way, so, we were talking about how we're all big Zionists here, and Zionists would never do identity politics.
It's wrong to judge people based on their socioeconomic class, on their skin color, on their religion, on their gender, but wokeness has brought all of that right back, and now it's exactly the way we should judge people.
So the idea was before, nobody was being judged based on their ethnicity or based on their class or anything like that. You know, before, nobody was doing that. It was wokeness that brought in the idea that people should be judged based on their ethnicity and their socioeconomic status. She says, as a first-generation colonizer in a regime where all of your legal rights are determined based on your race marker on your ID.
Now, once you base everybody on immutable characteristics, on intersectionalism, right, it becomes the opposite of
that. What? Does she not know what intersectionality? Yeah, well, clearly she does not know. But that's. I'm not even sure. Does she think that immutable characteristics is a synonym for intersectionalism? Like, where the fuck is she? It's just fucking word salad.
Color blindness. It becomes an us versus them mentality. We have this kind of.
Well, I mean, yeah, and Israel would never fall for an us versus them mentality. Like, I mean, you never see that in Israel because they're not woke. That's why they're so easy to get along with.
The oppressed victimhood hierarchy, and wherever you happen to fall in that hierarchy dictates your standing in society, right? So I'll pause there, but that's.
I mean, again, what country are you in again?
That's the religion that has swept in.
Why? Whose house? Well, like, who lived in the place that you're sitting in, say, I don't know, 76 years ago? And why is it that you get to live there now and they don't?
To our homes, to our children, instead of either religion, right, like Christianity or Judaism, etc., or the liberal ideologies of a live and let live individualistic society.
Albert, thank you so much for...
Yeah. I mean, because if there's one thing Israel is, it's very live and let live, and they would never indulge in like us versus them or anything like this. I mean, it's just very clear that the idea of like Zionist propaganda at this point is just to talk about literally anything else. Literally just talk about anything else and try to get through one news cycle at a time. Find some kind of distraction so people don't actually see what's going on in Gaza. So the people at home don't see how utterly wrecked Israeli ground forces are getting, because they're glorified cops. They are not trained to fight. Like, I mean, they do shit that is like first day of basic mistakes, like sticking their heads out the window in a built up area full of where like resistance forces could be literally anywhere, and then they immediately get targeted. So it's just straight up distraction is all this is, and it's just wild. Yeah, so because it's one thing to have these arguments. It's one thing to have these arguments in a place, to use these arguments in a country that is founded on like old school liberal ideology, like the liberalism, with all its hypocrisy, with all its bullshit, but the bourgeois liberalism of like the age of the French Revolution and stuff like that, which at least pretends to care about equality, pretends to care about individual rights, pretends to care about Enlightenment values. But Zionism explicitly rejects Enlightenment values. Explicitly rejects liberalism. It's to be trying to use these same lines. I mean, obviously they're doing this in English. They're doing this for an Anglo audience. So clearly the idea is this is for like, I guess, complete rubes with absolutely no background on all of this. And they hear this and it's like, oh wow, they're just like those nice PragerU people. Obviously they can do no wrong. Or something like that. But it's just straight up PragerU bullshit. This is just PragerU. Except, with big genocide raging in the background. And ethnic cleansing just a couple of blocks away. Jesus fucking Christ. Wonderful, wonderful people here. I mean, just absolutely. And now we understand why the woke are more outraged by pronouns than by Hamas. And we also know a little bit about why Zionist propagandists are more outraged by the existence of trans people than by the existence of genocide a short drive away from them. But it is time to wrap up for tonight. I will be back tomorrow at 11:30 p.m. U.S. Eastern Time. And if you enjoy the stream, please consider supporting the stream with a tip or my Patreon. And I look forward to seeing you tomorrow.